So the Diablo 4 beta begins in a couple days here, and I wanted to give you all a couple example builds that you could follow no matter what class you're playing. I will follow up with a couple more builds when the further weekend comes out for when everyone can play, but this is going to give you basically kind of a springboard. If you don't really care to go through and read all your abilities, this will at least have some innate synergy and get you through the leveling process with some decent success, because, well, we can only reach level 25, and so when you get to that point, you might start experimenting then, but maybe you just want to experience the content. This will just help those players out that may want to, have a little guideline going into it. Of course, at the end of the day, experiment, do whatever you want, but let's dive into some examples here. So here we are on the Diablo 4 build calculator, and as I said, I'll have one for the Rogue, one for the Barbarian, one for the Sorcerer. But diving into the basics of the skill tree really quick here, again, I don't want to make this a huge video on this topic because I'm sure a lot of people have heard it, but we have basic and core skills here. Basic skills are going to be your resource generators, which means if you, for example, the Barbarian, you're going to get Fury for hitting people with these basic abilities. Then you're going to have the core abilities, which are going to be resource spenders. So you're going to generate your resource. If in Barbarian's case, it's going to be Fury, and then your core skills are going to spend that Fury on a hard-hitting ability. So the idea here is that you're going to want to focus a core ability to build around and your basic ability to try to amplify that core ability. That's kind of the goal here. On top of that, after we get through the first two nodes, you'll notice that each class ends up getting a lot different because you'll have three future, big nodes that depict sort of different styles of the class. For example, in Barb, we have defensive skills, we have brawling skills, we have weapon mastery skills, and then we have an ultimate skill. Every class unlocks the ultimate skill at level 25, and we'll be able to use that there. But the other three nodes can depend on each class. For example, the Rogue's going to have a little bit of mobility, a little bit of stealthy, and things like that. Now, another thing to note is we do want to point into our ultimate. It's going to be very, very crucial. So we do know that we're going to spend one ultimate point down here. And we can also see that each of these nodes require skill points in the previous skills that we've unlocked to unlock the next node. So for example, here, if I were to just go ahead and reset my tree here, we just reset it. Come on. Well, I guess I got some words on the screen, but if I were to go ahead and drop some abilities into Frenzy, you'll notice that the next node actually unlocks when I drop 2 points into here. Now, the key is we can actually drop into any node that we already have unlocked in order to progress to the next node. Like, you don't have to put, let's say, 6 points into the previous node directly in order to unlock the next one. If I want to go all in on Frenzy here, I could, and then that would unlock the next group of abilities. So that's super, super important as well. So again, the idea here is to put in a couple points to your basic and immediately unlock your core skill. And if we're unlocking our core skill, we're going to probably invest all of our points into our core skill before moving on at all, because that's going to be our main source of damage. Unless, of course, you have some movement ability, and then you may want to unlock that because that might speed you up along your content. And again, we're going to go over all these things in the builds. So diving into the Rogue here, I wanted every build to kind of have a decent amount of AoE as well as a decent amount of single target damage, just so that anyone can play and pick them up and play them in a group decently well, play them as solo decently well, and actually clear the trash, have a little bit of mobility inside their builds if they can, and overall just do well for themselves if they're solo play. Also, a thing to note that each class has their own specialization or own class system, and we'll talk about those more as we dive into the other classes. But for the Rogue here, we actually basically cannot unlock it, as far as I understand, because you need to get to level 15 and you unlock a class-specific story quest that is not going to be able to be reached because it's in a different map, and that goes for the Sorcerer as well. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. However, the class system is combo points, or potentially a different form. There's a few other ones, but combo points is generally one that I found to be really, really nice, because it's basically the more you hit with your basics, which we're going to be weaving basics in, the more we're going to be generating combo points, and the more we're going to get value out of our second skill. Now, as for the Rogue here and what build we got going on, this is going to be a barrage build. The barrage is honestly, in my opinion, the best skill out of all the core skills for the rogue for most content. Now, this is going to be a bow focused build. So if you don't want to use a bow, don't run this build. But barrage is going to basically line up a bunch of arrows, one in the middle, and then it's going to spread outwards, two on each side, and it's going to shoot towards that direction. Okay, and the key here is that it's going to always start at the middle, so you're always going to hit that main target, which is going to be super important, and then it's going to hit all the other side targets. Most of the game is clearing trash, so this is going to be very, very crucial to clear trash for you. If you're running other skills, rapid fire is exceptionally good at taking down single targets. So if you're playing in a group, maybe you have someone to clear the trash, you could run rapid fire. Barrage is much better at clearing trash, so that's why we went for barrage. Now, the idea here is we need to put 2 points into forceful arrow to unlock barrage, and then we're going to max out barrage as well as the 2 upgrades associated with it. We want enhanced barrage, so anytime we strike a vulnerable enemy or critically strike, we're going to ricochet our arrows. So when we hit someone, it has a chance to ricochet with dealing a percentage of that target's damage or that arrow's damage, which is super nice for clearing out trash, as I mentioned. And so now when we hit vulnerable enemies, we're just going to ricochet all over the place and just have massive AoE. And that's where forceful arrow comes in, because every third hit is going to make the enemy vulnerable. So you might want to start out the battle, maybe forceful arrow, barrage, forceful arrow, and then you barrage that last time when you have vulnerable, and it just nukes the whole AoE wave or mob density. It's so cool. On top of that, we're running enhanced forceful arrow for extra critical strike chance, and then this is important, it's going to give a knockback effect when enemies are close, allowing you to do a little bit more kiting, which is important. But 2 points into forceful arrow, unlock barrage, dump all your points into barrage, come down here to agility, drop 1 point into dash to give us a little bit of movement ability. You could also run with shadow step, which is going to basically, you kind of have to have target doesn't have the multiple charges and things like that. So I kind of prefer dash typically. Then we have subterfuge, and this is where it gets a little bit more interesting as well, because we're going to pick up concealment, and we're also going to pick up enhanced concealment, which is going to give us more energy for barraging, and then countering concealment, which is going to guarantee us a critical strike when we break concealment. So this is actually really interesting, because if you're moving through packs, you could pop concealment, immediately drop out of concealment, and then immediately crit, ricochet, nuke a wave. So it's really, really nice combo for clearing through dungeons and such things like that. So when we picked up subterfuge and concealment, we picked up these 2 upgrade nodes, and then we're going to head back up here, drop 2 more points into or a point into forceful arrow, and then a point into each of the advanced upgrades. Then we're going to head down here to imbuements, and we're going to max out poison imbuement. Now, the reason why we're going for poison over the other ones is because poison is going to allow us to basically do more single target damage, and this helps us out for the bosses, because to be honest, the barrage build isn't nearly as good as rapid fire for taking down bosses, and so this is going to amp it up a lot. On top of that, when we can see here, this blended poison imbuement works really well with concealment. You can see here, critical strikes with poison imbued skills deal 30% increased poisoning damage. So what you could do is you could proc poison imbuement, head into concealment, stealth, barrage out of the concealment, nuke everyone in the AoE because of the ricochet, and then the poison is going to do more damage. This is really, really nice as a combo. And lastly, we're going to pick up Shadow Clone to basically 1.6 times our damage when we have Shadow Clone active. Now, you can go with like Death Trap or Rain of Arrows. The problem I see with these ones is for the beta, since we're only level 25, you're not going to be able to get the extra upgrades here, and Shadow Clone's just going to amplify the stuff that you've already built, which is super, super nice. So you're going to mimic your barrages, so it's going to be super good for just nuking down waves and waves of enemies or the single target boss encounters. So that's going to be your barrage, forceful arrow, poison, imbuement build. It's super fun. I really, really enjoyed this. This is probably my favorite build out of the Diablo 4 Rogue so far in the early game, compared to like Rapid Fire. I found Rapid Fire to be very good for bosses, but Barrage was a little bit better for clearing content. Moving on to the Barbarian here. By the way, I will be leaving a URL, the share URL for these builds in the description down below, so you guys can check these out. The Barbarian has an interesting class unique system called the Arsenal system, and this is basically allowing the Barbarian to wield multiple weapons at a time, not just the singular weapon. However, for this build, we're going to be focusing in on the two-handed sword. The Arsenal system unlocks at level 5, and it basically levels up separately. You can level up each one of these weapons, and the two-handed sword specifically is going to give you the unique bonus of, I wrote it down here, 20% of direct damage you deal is going to be inflicted as bleeding over 5 seconds. And if we reach level 10, that's the rank 10 power, by the way. And if we reach the rank 10 additional bonus, you're going to deal increased bleeding damage for 5 seconds after killing an enemy, which works really, really well with our overall build. So I definitely recommend you picking up a two-handed sword, although most often it's not going to matter too much as long as it's a two-handed weapon specifically, and I'll get to that in a moment. Now, as for the Barbarian here, let's go over the core skill first. Whirlwind. This is a Whirlwind build. It's going to be pretty standard that you might have seen, but we're going to be going for a bleed type Whirlwind build. And now Whirlwind is pretty simple. It's just going to spin and you're going to damage everyone around you. And then we have an enhanced Whirlwind, which gives us extra fury when we're dealing damage to an enemy, which is very, very important for continuous whirlwinding. But then also when we're using a slashing weapon, Whirlwind also inflicts 26% bleeding damage over 5 seconds. Now, slashing weapons are going to be things like your sword, which is why we want a sword. Okay. As for our basic ability, we're going to have Flay. It's going to deal damage and inflict bleeding damage over 5 seconds. And then we're also going to pick up Enhanced Flay, which is when Flay deals direct damage to an enemy, we're going to deal additional bleeding damage over the next 3 seconds. And we're going to pick up Battle Flay, which is going to basically give us a chance to make an enemy vulnerable. And it's going to double when we're using a two-handed weapon. Again, two-handed weapon is the key here. So a two-handed sword is the ideal one, but if you can't, a two-handed weapon is going to be important. So 2 points into here, we're going to go Flay into Enhanced Flay, and then we're going to max out Whirlwind. Absolutely max out Whirlwind. And then I recommend heading into Endless Fury for 2 points to pick up the basic skills, generate extra fury when using two-handed weapons. This is going to be very, very nice to continuously Whirlwind, and then come back up here and pick up Battle Flay, and then come down here to the defensive tree and actually pick up Rallying Cry. This is going to grant allies increased movement speed and increased resource generation. This is going to be super nice in group play, but also just, giving yourself some resource generation and movement speed. Always nice. Heading down to Brawling, we're going to pick up Leap, and then we're going to pick up Enhanced Leap, and then Power Leap. So this is mainly for movement around the map, and this is one thing you could change if you didn't necessarily care about that. But Enhanced Leap, this is going to basically, when we don't damage an enemy, we're going to get some of that cooldown back. You can see the cooldown on here is 17 seconds, so it's decently long. This gives us a little bit of mobility inside the game. And then we're going to pick up Power Leap, and this is actually really good when jumping into battle because we're going to gain some fury, which is allowing us to use Whirlwind for even longer. Then we have Weapon Mastery, and this is where we get our single turret damage, because you might have noticed that Whirlwind is just kind of that AoE cleave, which is what we want. But then, similar to the Rogue, we're going to pick up our single target damaging skills later on in Death Blow. The Death Blow, attempt a killing strike dealing damage to enemies in front of you, massive damage. Then we're going to pick up Enhanced Death Blow, which is going to deal 100% increased damage to bosses. This is going to nuke down bosses really, really nice. And if we damage an enemy, we're going to gain Berserking, which is going to give us extra damage, which is super nice. So Death Blow, smack someone, massive, massive value there, just completely annihilate. And keep in mind, if this kills an enemy, the cooldown is reset. So what's cool about it is if you're whirlwinding and you're in a group and you might be fighting an elite or a boss, if you time the Death Blow correctly, you're going to kill an enemy and hit the boss, which basically means you can constantly use this. This is a super, super powerful build for clearing out elites and trash. Then we have the ultimate skill, which is going to be Wrath of the Berserker. It's going to gain Berserking and Unstoppable for 5 seconds, and dealing damage with basic skills grants Berserking. Now, you could go with Call of the Ancients to just give us extra characters that are going to do crazy things like dealing damage, or doing some basically just a ton of damage, or even Iron Maelstrom, dealing damage and stunning. However, I prefer I prefer the Wrath of the Berserker because I like the extra damage and the extra bonuses that Berserking provides for us. And being unstoppable is always nice. So I prefer Wrath of the Berserker. I actually do like Iron Maelstrom and Call of the Ancients. This one is one of those, ultimates where you could kind of go for any of them and not really be too sad about it because they're all really strong. Whereas in the Rogue, I felt like the Shadow Clone is very, very powerful, and I also felt like the Rain of Arrows was very, very powerful in a lot of scenarios, but the Trap can sometimes be mediocre in some scenarios. So that's going to be your Whirlwind Bleed slash Death Blow build. It's super fun. Definitely give it a try, guys. And I will move on to the Sorcerer. Now for the Sorcerer, we're starting at the ultimate down here. We're going crazy, but for the Sorcerer here, the similar logic applies as to the Rogue, which is the enchantment ability. It does not unlock until level 15, and it should be locked behind a quest, which is in another map, so you should not be able to unlock it. But either way, the enchantment effects are very, very good on the abilities we're picking up. Now, the Sorcerer, we're running a Fireball build, in general, a burning fire-themed build, because that's going to usually do the most damage, and that's what I want. So Fireball here, it's going to hurl a ball of fire, dealing damage, and it's actually going to AoE. So Sorcerer has probably the most AoE, even more than the Whirlwind Barb if you're playing it correctly. Now we're going to pick Enhanced Fireball because we have such big mana cost issues on the Sorcerer. Then we're going to pick up Destructive Fireball, which is going to deal 20% increased damage to the first enemy hit. It's going to give us a little bit more single target damage. As for our basic ability, we're going to pick up Fire Bolt, hurling a flaming bolt, dealing damage and inflicting burning. And then Firebolt pierces burning enemies. We're going to have a lot of burning, so we're going to be able to pierce through enemies and actually deal a ton of damage that way, and actually generate 2 mana when hitting a burning enemy. You can see here that this is going to be one of the ways that we're actually going to generate a lot more mana for our Fireball itself. So we're going to put 2 points again into the basic ability, Firebolt into Enhanced Firebolt, come down here and pick up Fireball and max it out. Then we're going to move down and pick up Flame Shield, which is going to basically engulf ourselves and burn people around us, and then also give us movement speed with Enhanced Flame Shield. This is super, super nice, as well as making enemies vulnerable for 4 seconds. So you're going to want to pop Flame Shield, run in there, not get hit, because we're going to talk about something else a little bit later, but only slightly stand next to. Now, this is one thing that you don't have to run. Honestly, this is a little bit more difficult of a playstyle. Instead, you can just pick up Teleport, and then you could run with, for example, you can just pick up Enhanced Teleport and then Shimmering Teleport, because you can see here, Teleport is actually going to do damage when you arrive. So right here, you could see cooldown 11 seconds, then you can pick up this and then potentially reduce that to 8 seconds, which can be super useful as well. But I prefer the Flame Shield in general because I think it's nice to increase our damage as well. Then we have the Hydra. This is one of those areas where we didn't really want to invest too high, but we do have Hydra. It's going to summon a Hydra, spit fire, dealing damage, and then it's going to last for additional time, and then it's also going to burn enemies, which again is going to work with a lot of our abilities. Then we're going to go for Meteor, and this is where it gets a little bit interesting because we actually wanted to go for a passive over more Meteor abilities, because the Meteor, although it's really solid, I wanted to pick up the most important things here. And you can see here, it's going to summon a Meteor, burning the ground and dealing damage when it strikes. And then we're going to pick up Enhanced Meteor, which is if it hits enemies, 3 or more enemies, there is a chance you're going to summon an additional Meteor, which is super powerful, especially if you're able to group adds around an elite or a boss. This is going to massively increase your damage. And then you're going to have Inner Flames, which means that you're going to deal 24% increased damage after you haven't taken damage for 3 seconds. This is a massive bonus. This is basically like the idea of Squirt's necklace from Diablo 3. So you're going to basically deal more damage if you haven't taken damage. So you have to not take damage to get value out of this. And if you're a little worried about this, you can always invest more points into Meteor, or even just go for 1 point into Inner Flames and then 2 points into Pyromancy skills, dealing extra damage for each source of burning. So, you can just get a little bit extra passive damage there. But honestly, if you're a little bit worried about taking damage, you can just go for more points into Meteor. And then we're going to head over to our ultimate and pick up Inferno. Inferno is going to just ignite a Roaring Inferno, dealing damage, burning enemies, and dealing damage to people on the outer edge. So very, very much focused on a burn type build, focusing in on Fireball. This build has the best AoE out of them all. Fireball is just constantly getting thrown out there, and it does massive damage. Again, since you are ranged, you're going to be clearing trash like crazy as long as you're not getting hit, because you're going to amp up all your damage, and then you're going to have the flame shield to just burn enemies as you walk past them if you're going to do that. And this build is super fun, so definitely encourage you all to try this one out. So that's going to wrap up the video. If you guys enjoyed, if you guys want to see more Diablo 4 content, be sure to sub to the channel, guys. I'll be pumping out some more Diablo 4 videos, grinding the beta like crazy, as well as I will leave a link to all of these builds as well as the site itself in the description down below, so you guys can check it out, assuming the share URL actually works, because I have not tested it out, so I hope it works. If not, you guys can just refer to this video in the future. Hopefully you guys have a fun time playing the beta. I know I will. If you guys are wanting to kind of check out more videos, more content, I will be streaming the beta the day it comes out that morning. So if you guys are curious, check out back to this channel or just subscribe, turn notifications on, and you'll be able to see when I actually go live for us to kind of hang out, chat a little bit. And again, let me know what you guys think about the builds down below. Let me know what you are excited for to build out in the beta, because these are just theory crafts builds that are pretty basic. I wanted to keep it basic so that people don't have too much complication going on, but there's so many other things I want to try, and I can't wait to dive in there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.